Hi folks, it's the end of the first week. We're getting ready to start week 2. So I figured I would just do a quick little tutorial video to kind of cover some of the questions that I was getting last week. So I'm just going to go over a few problems related to the work we were doing with triangle congruence last week to kind of help you out a little bit. And then this week we are going to be doing mostly all review. The review of the triangle stuff we were doing back when we were in school, and then just a little bit that we did last week. So here are a couple problems, like I've been on the assignments for the last few days, where you're trying to tell if the triangles are congruent or not. And so remember, we have a few different properties to choose from to decide whether or not they are congruent. So what I have to do is I have to look at the triangles and I have to see what information do I have in the two triangles, what corresponding parts match up, and then is it one of the properties that proves triangles are congruent? So if I look at this first problem, and these are straight off some of the assignments for last week, I have two triangles here, right, and I have some markings. So let's look at what I have. First here, I have this angle up here that is marked with a single arc, and that one as well. So I have those angles correspond and match up as congruent. So I have an angle there. I have this side here, BC, which by marking appears to match up with DC right here. So I also have a side that's matching up in the two triangles. So I have an angle and I have a side. But as you know from all work last week, you need 3 pieces of information in order for the triangles to be able to be proven congruent. And nothing else is marked. But you should know that this angle here, we'll mark that with a double slash, would be equal to this angle here because they're vertical angles, right? Learned that in our first unit. So now look at what you have. You have an angle, and a side. And then over here you have an angle, and a side. So these two triangles, we have an angle, and a side. And so that's one of the properties that does prove the triangles are congruent. So these two triangles are congruent by angle, side. Right? And notice the order. We have an angle followed by angle and then a side that is not in between them. So that's why it's angle, side. Now, when I also want to state the triangle congruence, I can say triangle ABC is congruent to, now I have to do the same ordering of the letters on this side. So angle A matches up with angle E. So when I name this triangle, I have to start with E. So it would be triangle E, and then angle B matches up with angle D, so D goes next. And then obviously C is going to match up with itself. So this would be the final answer there for that one, that these two triangles are in fact congruent by the angle, side theorem or property, right? We talked about last week. The words theorem and property, they all mean the same thing. Postulate, fancy words that mean the same thing. It's just a property, okay? Now here we have another couple triangles, okay, on here. And here I don't have them labeled, so let me label A, B, C, and D again, just so we can do the lettering. Now here I got to look at what I have. Now I have the two triangles. I have a side here, AB, that appears to match up with AD because of the single slash. So I have one pair of sides. And now here I have BC, which appears to match up with DC because of the double slash. Right? So I have two pairs of sides, of corresponding sides that appear to match up and be congruent. But again, remember, I always need 3 pieces of information in order to prove that they're congruent. Well, what other piece might I have? How about this side right down the middle that the two triangles share, right? AC is obviously going to be congruent to itself if I were to pull the triangles apart and look at them separately. So I actually have 3 sides in this triangle that match up with 3 sides in that triangle. So these triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Because you know all 3 corresponding sides are definitely congruent by the way the diagram is. And now again, we want to do the lettering to match it up. So if I do triangle ABC is congruent to, I have to go in the same order in the other triangle. So if I start with angle A, I obviously have to start with angle A. And then angle B corresponds with angle D, so it would be AD and then C. Okay? All right, we're going to do maybe one or two more, and hopefully that helps you out a little bit with some of the questions that I was getting last week. All right, here's two more examples that I just want to do with you quickly. So again, let's look at the triangles. Let's look at what we have. We have an angle here that matches up with an angle here. So we have angle E and then angle E are obviously the same. And then over here, these two angles with the double arcs are also congruent. So we have two angles that we know are congruent to each other. But we need a third piece of information. Well, this side here is shared by the two triangles. So it's obviously going to be equal to itself. So these two triangles, we have an angle, a side, and an angle. Now notice for that one I wrote angle, side, angle, whereas the other one I had done angle, angle, side, and it has to do with the order. Here the side is in between the two angles, so that's why it's angle, side, angle. So these two triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle that matches up. And if I want to do lettering, triangle, I'll start at D. D, E, G would be congruent to triangle. Well, D corresponds with F, so I'd have to start with F. So D, E, that would be F, E, G. Okay? And now last one here. And this one, I drew it roughly, so it might not look perfectly like it does on the paper. But you look at it, I have a side here, AC, that appears to match up with EC right here. They might not look perfectly the same on my whiteboard, but they're marked that they're congruent with the double slash, right? And then I have the side DC, which matches up with BC there because it's got the triple slash. So again, now I have two sides that correspond and match up. But again, I need three pieces of information. So where's that third piece of information going to come from? How about right here, right? Vertical angles. We know that that angle would be equal to that other angle, right? This angle C here would be equal to this angle C here. So now I have a side, an angle, and a side. A side, an angle, and a side, right? So they're congruent by side, angle, side. Okay? And if I do the lettering, one last thing here, the lettering, triangle. If I do A, C, B, and you can do any order for the first triangle, it's the second triangle that you have to be careful of. So if I do A, C, B, that's along the double slash side. So that's going to match up with E, C, D. Again, by side, angle, side. Okay? So when you're trying to prove these triangles are congruent, you need three pieces of information, okay? And you have to make sure that those pieces of information correspond. Remember, we do have two properties that don't work. Angle, 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 that doesn't prove congruence. And then SSA also doesn't prove congruence. So if you have that information in the problem, it does not prove that they're congruent, all right? So hopefully this helped a little bit with the questions from last week. You can always email me during my office hours, 10 to 11 in the morning and 1 to 2 in the afternoon, and I will get right back to you. If you email me at another time, I'll get back to you. It just won't be immediate. And again, next week we're going to be doing total review to get ready for our Unit 2 test, which will be at the end of next week. But it should be all things that we've seen. So no new material next week, so you can kind of take a little bit of a breath on that. And we'll just be spending all week kind of reviewing this, but also reviewing all the stuff that we had covered when we were in class. Hope everybody's having a good weekend.